The jungle breathed with him. In, out, slow, controlled. Master Chief Petty Officer Paul Brennan pressed his cheek against the wet earth, feeling the pulse of Vietnam through his skin. 33 years old, 7 years in the teams, and he'd learned one truth above all others. The jungle always spoke before it killed you. Tonight it was whispering. His team, 6 SEALs, all brothers forged in hell, moved through the darkness like ghosts. Operation Silver Lance. Extract a downed pilot 15 clicks behind enemy lines. Simple on paper, suicide in practice. But SEALs didn't leave men behind. That was the code. That was everything. Brennan raised his fist. The team froze. There, 50 meters ahead, a flicker of movement that didn't belong to the wind. His eyes, adjusted to darkness after hours of patrol, caught the shape. Small, compact, human. Contact, he whispered into his radio. Single individual, Western Tree Line. His spotter, Danny Kowalski, kid from Pittsburgh with a wife and baby girl back home, shifted beside him. Could be a farmer. At 0300, in a free fire zone? Brennan shook his head. It's a spotter, VC, we've been made. The words had barely left his mouth when the jungle erupted. Not with the chatter of AK-47s or the roar of RPGs, with something worse. Silence. Then a single crack, sharp, precise, surgical. The sound of a rifle that knew its purpose. Kowalski's head snapped back. No cry, no warning, just the wet sound of a bullet finding home, and his body going slack against the mud. "Sniper!" Brennan screamed. "Get down! Get—" Another crack. Petty Officer James Chen dropped, grabbing his throat. Blood poured between his fingers, black in the moonlight. Brennan's mind raced through his training. Sniper protocol. Move, don't hide, suppressing fire, create chaos. But this wasn't a textbook scenario. This was death delivered with patience, and they were the targets. A third shot, then a fourth. 2 more brothers down. Brennan low-crawled toward a fallen log. His M16 clutched so tight his knuckles went white. His remaining teammates scattered like leaves, trying to find the shooter, trying to return fire at a ghost. The 5th crack took his radioman, and then Brennan saw her. Just for a second, a shape in the canopy, 40 feet up, wrapped in foliage that made her part of the tree itself. The moonlight caught her face, young, maybe 20, with eyes that held no hatred, no anger, just focus, professional, cold. She was reloading. Brennan didn't think. 30 years later, he'd still remember this moment with perfect clarity. He raised his rifle, centered the front sight post on that small shape in the darkness, and squeezed the trigger. The M16 bucked against his shoulder. 3-round burst. The shape fell. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. She just let go. Dropped from the tree like fruit falling in autumn, and hit the ground with a sound that would echo in his nightmares for 3 decades. When they reached her body, Brennan saw the rifle first. A Mosin Nagant, Soviet-made, but maintained with a precision that spoke of pride. The wood stock was carved with small notches. He counted them by flashlight. 17. His team had been notches 18 through 22. She was just a kid, someone said behind him. Maybe it was the last surviving member of his team, Hernandez, who'd take a bullet 6 months later in Hue City. Brennan knelt beside the girl's body. Her eyes were still open, staring at nothing. In her breast pocket, he found a photograph. A family. Parents, maybe. Siblings. People who would never know where she fell or why. She was a soldier, Brennan said quietly, and she was better than all of us. He'd killed her, but she'd taught him something in those terrible seconds. Never, ever underestimate anyone. Not because of their age, not because of their size, and sure as hell not because of their gender. The lesson had cost him 5 brothers. He'd remember it for the rest of his life. 30 years later, Joint Base Ironwood, Arizona, 1998, Master Chief Paul Brennan sat in an office that smelled like government-issue cleaning solution and old coffee, staring at a personnel file that might as well have been written in a foreign language. Lieutenant Rachel Kellerman, the header read, first female candidate, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Marine Scout Sniper background, 12 confirmed kills, Operation Desert Storm, 1991. 63 years old now, gray at the temples, scars on his hands from 3 decades of service, a body that creaked like an old ship but still functioned when it needed to. 6 months from mandatory retirement, 6 months from a pension and a quiet life somewhere far from uniforms and salutes. And they wanted him to mentor this, a woman, in the SEALs. Brennan rubbed his face, feeling every year of his age in that gesture. He'd been in the team since 1961, back when SEALs were still new, still proving themselves. He'd seen the service change, evolve, adapt. Women in combat support roles, then combat roles. He'd accepted it, mostly. Intellectually, he understood it. But the SEALs? The brotherhood he'd bled for, killed for, nearly died for? His hand unconsciously touched the scar on his left shoulder. Shrapnel from a grenade in Grenada, 1983. The medic who'd saved him had been a woman, Navy corpsman, cool under fire, hands steady while his blood painted her uniform red. She'd been professional, competent, brave, but she hadn't been a SEAL. The door opened without a knock. Commander Stephen Vickers, Ironwood's executive officer, stepped in with a kind of smile that meant trouble. "Paul," he said, too friendly, too casual. "Read the file?" "Read it." Brennan closed the folder. "Doesn't mean I understand it." "Understand what?" "Why she's here, why now, and why you need a dinosaur like me to babysit the Navy's diversity experiment." Vickers' smile faded. He closed the door, pulled a chair, and sat down with the air of a man about to share a secret. "You know why you're still here, Paul? 6 months past when most chiefs retire? My winning personality. Because you're respected. Because when you say something, people listen. Younger guys look at you and see what they want to be at 63. Still in the fight, still relevant." Vickers leaned forward. "This program needs credibility. A female SEAL candidate needs a mentor who can't be accused of playing politics. You're old guard, traditional. If you vouch for her, if you say she can hack it, people will believe it. And if I say she can't, then the program probably ends, and she goes back to the fleet with a black mark that follows her forever." Vickers stood. "Look, I'm not asking you to like this. I'm asking you to do your job. Evaluate her fairly. If she's not good enough, you tell me, but give her the chance." Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, the Arizona sun beat down on the training compound. Young sailors ran obstacle courses, practiced close-quarters combat, prepared for wars that looked nothing like the ones he'd fought. "When does she arrive?" 0900, about 20 minutes. Brennan checked his watch, an old Rolex Submariner, gift from the team after his first tour. The crystal was scratched to hell, but it kept perfect time. "Then I better look presentable," he said, standing with a grunt that betrayed his age more than he liked. Vickers paused at the door. "Paul, for what it's worth, I've read her file 3 times. On paper, she's better qualified than half the men we've put through BUD/S. On paper," Brennan said, "I should have died in Vietnam. Funny how reality doesn't care about paperwork." The white government van kicked up dust as it rolled through Ironwood's main gate. Rachel Kellerman sat in the back, a single duffel bag at her feet, watching the base unfold through windows filmed with Arizona grit. She'd been to 100 bases, Paris Island for boot camp, Camp Lejeune for School of Infantry, Quantico for Scout Sniper School, a dozen forward operating bases during Desert Storm, each one a collection of tents and sandbags in landscapes designed to kill you slowly. But this was different. This was the last stop. Pass here, and she'd pin the trident. Fail, and she'd spend the rest of her career as a footnote, the woman who tried and couldn't. A cautionary tale for every female Marine who dared to dream beyond what tradition allowed. No pressure. The van stopped at the admin building. Rachel grabbed her bag, packed light, military efficient, and stepped out into heat that hit like a physical force. 108 degrees, according to the thermometer mounted by the door. The kind of heat that made you understand why ancient peoples worshipped the sun out of fear. Inside was cooler, but not by much. A specialist sat behind a desk, young enough to be her kid brother, tired enough to be her grandfather. His nameplate read Diaz, coffee stain on his sleeve, keyboard that had seen better decades. He looked up when she entered, and his eyes did the calculation every man's eyes did. Female, officer rank, combat ribbons that didn't add up to the face. The math confused them every time. Help you, ma'am? Polite, professional, but his posture said he'd already decided she didn't belong. Rachel slid her orders across the desk. Lieutenant Kellerman, checking in for the CQB instructor program. Diaz glanced at the papers, then back at her. CQB, huh? We don't get many. I mean, that's usually... He caught himself, cleared his throat. System's pulling your records now. The computer hummed and clicked. Rachel waited, patient. She'd learned patience in sniper school. Sometimes you waited hours for a single shot. This was nothing. Huh, Diaz said, frowning at his screen. Your billet code's not loading right. Rachel leaned over just enough to see. You entered the wrong prefix. Should be NSW-DEV, not NSW-REG. I didn't... He stopped, looked closer, realized she was right. His face colored slightly. System's glitchy today. System's fine. People read too fast. She kept her voice neutral, not condescending, not angry, just factual. He corrected the entry. Her full record loaded instantly. Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, honor graduate. Desert Storm service record, 12 confirmed kills, though the official number was listed as classified. Special Warfare Candidate Pipeline. Every box checked, every standard exceeded. Diaz printed her badge with slightly more respect than he'd started with. Long as you don't mind me saying, ma'am, he handed over the laminated card. We don't see many women in the CQB rotation. Rachel clipped the badge to her uniform without looking at him. You're about to see one. Try to keep up. She walked past before he could decide if he'd been insulted or impressed. The admin corridor stretched long and fluorescent, lined with the usual military motivational posters. Discipline equals freedom. Train like you fight. Photographs of anonymous warriors doing anonymous warrior things in anonymous deserts. Then Rachel saw something that made her stop. A corkboard. Unofficial. The kind every unit had. Photos pinned up with thumbtacks, funny captions, inside jokes. Most of it harmless. A barbecue. Somebody's promotion ceremony. A joke about the chow hall meatloaf. But in the corner, half hidden behind a memo about dental appointments, was a photo that didn't belong. A young woman. Female sailor, maybe 22, 23, taken from behind at an angle that suggested the photographer had been hiding. She was bent over, adjusting her boot, and someone had drawn on the photo with a marker. An arrow pointing at her rear. A crude caption that Rachel wouldn't repeat out loud. Below it, another photo. Different woman, same angle, same violation. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she didn't touch the board. Not yet. Document first, react later. That was the rule. She pulled out her phone, took 3 photos from different angles. Date stamp, time stamp, location tagged, evidence. Then she kept walking, because tearing it down now would just alert whoever put it up. Across from the board, a security monitor cycled through camera feeds. Nothing dramatic. Hallways, doorways, empty benches. But Rachel's eye caught something wrong. The timestamp in the corner of the feed read 8:42. The clock above the reception desk read 8:51. 9 minutes off. She glanced at a nearby corkboard, found a maintenance log clipped in a plastic sleeve. Routine stuff, HVAC repairs, plumbing work, light fixture replacements. But one entry repeated every week like clockwork. Bay 3, camera calibration, Friday, 1800 hours. Rachel memorized the pattern. Camera off by exactly 9 minutes. Weekly calibration in a specific bay. Photos of women violated without consent. Either this was the most incompetent maintenance crew in military history, or someone was very carefully creating blind spots. She pulled out her phone again, opened an encrypted messaging app, typed a single message to a contact saved only as Torres. Pattern confirmed. Camera maintenance suspicious. Will observe before action. The reply came 30 seconds later. Understood. Stay dark until you have hard evidence. Brennan arrives tomorrow to brief you. Coordinate with him before any moves. Rachel pocketed the phone and pushed through the double doors into the training wing. The air changed immediately. Gym smell, sweat, rubber mats, the metallic tang of weights pushed to failure. Sound echoed different here, bouncing off cinder block walls and high ceilings. And voices, loud, confident, male. At the center of the main training base stood the man who owned the room before he'd even spoken. Master Sergeant Derek Garrison. Early 40s, shoulders like a linebacker, smile like a politician. Clipboard in hand, audience at attention. And that, he was saying, voice pitched for maximum carry, is why you never let a Marine count your ammo or your condoms. Laughter erupted. Too much of it. The kind that came not from humor, but from social obligation. From the need to be part of the group. From fear of what happened if you didn't laugh. Rachel watched from the doorway, analyzing. Garrison didn't command this room through rank. He commanded it through charisma. Through being the guy everyone wanted to impress, wanted to be near, wanted approval from. That made him more dangerous than any drill sergeant who ruled by fear. Beside him, a corporal built like a bulldozer, nameplate read, Brooks, stood with arms crossed, grinning like he was in on the joke. Tyler Brooks, if Rachel's pre-brief was accurate, former Ranger, washed out of Special Forces selection for attitude problems, which was code for something nobody wanted to document officially. Near the wall, another soldier sat with his back against a gear rack, phone in hand. Sergeant Marcus Webb, baby-faced, maybe 26, the kind of guy who looked harmless until you realized his phone camera was always angled wrong. Pointed at women when they stretched, focused on bodies, not faces. And then there was Sergeant Hannah Price, early 30s, fit but not intimidating, smile that said, "Don't worry, I'm one of the good ones." The kind of woman who made other women relax, made them think they'd found an ally in a male-dominated space. Rachel had met women like Hannah before. Some were genuine. Some were predators who'd learned that the best camouflage was gender solidarity. She didn't know which one Hannah was yet, but she'd find out. Garrison noticed her first. His eyes tracked her entry with the precision of someone who inventoried every person in his space, who calculated threats and opportunities in the same glance. "Well," he said, voice shifting to include her without breaking his performance. "Look who decided to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Navy brass in the house." Every head turned. Rachel felt the weight of 30 pairs of eyes, felt the math happening in 30 brains. Officer, woman, not standard. What does this mean? She walked forward, calm, not hurried, not hesitant. Master Sergeant Garrison, Lieutenant Kellerman, reporting for instructor rotation. Lieutenant. He made the ranks sound like a joke they were both in on. Heard we were getting a Navy liaison. Didn't expect. He gestured vaguely at her, letting the sentence hang incomplete, letting everyone fill in their own meaning. Didn't expect what, Sergeant? Rachel's voice was flat. Not aggressive, not defensive, just waiting. Someone so motivated, he recovered smoothly. Usually liaisons are some desk officer looking to punch a ticket. But I've seen your file. Scout sniper, combat deployment. You're the real deal. He said it with respect, but his eyes said something else. They said, "You don't belong here, but I'll play along until you fail." "Just here to learn your CQB program," Rachel said. "Compare notes with Marine Corps methods." "Compare notes?" Garrison's smile widened. "I like that. Brooks, why don't you partner with the lieutenant for the next drill? Show her how we handle close quarters." Tyler Brooks pushed off the wall, rolling his shoulders like a boxer entering the ring. Up close, he was bigger than Rachel by 6 inches and probably 80 pounds. Hands like dinner plates, neck so thick it barely fit his collar. "Ma'am," he said, respectful on the surface, threatening in the posture. Rachel faced him on the mat, aware of the room's energy shifting. This wasn't just a drill. This was a test, maybe an initiation, definitely a message. Garrison called out the scenario. Basic rear choke escape. Attacker from 6 o'clock. Defender breaks contact and establishes control. "Brooks, you're the aggressor. Lieutenant, show us what the Corps taught you." Tyler moved behind her. Rachel felt his presence, felt the air change, felt the moment before contact. His arms snaked around her neck, too high, she noticed immediately. Textbook said mid-throat, cutting off air without crushing the windpipe. Tyler's arm pressed against her jaw, fingers spreading wide across her face. Not a training hold, a control hold. Rachel didn't panic. Panic was for amateurs. She'd been in this position before, in training, in combat, in situations where the wrong move meant death. She dropped her weight, broke his balance, pivoted inside his arm's radius, and used his own momentum to drive him face first into the mat. 3 seconds. 4 movements. Clean, efficient, textbook perfect. Tyler hit the ground with a grunt that suggested real pain. The room went silent. Rachel stepped back, breathing normal, hands loose at her sides. "Incorrect hand placement, Corporal. You compromised your grip integrity before establishing control. That's not technique, that's carelessness." Tyler rolled over, face red. From the mat or from embarrassment, hard to tell. He started to say something, but Garrison cut him off. "Well," the master sergeant's smile was smaller now, sharper. "Guess we know Navy girls can read a manual." "Among other things," Rachel said. She felt the room recalibrate, felt the dynamics shift in ways both subtle and profound. She'd proven she wasn't easy prey, but she'd also proven she was a threat to the established order, which meant the next move wouldn't be in front of witnesses. Garrison clapped once, loud, breaking the tension. "All right, people, reset stations. Next drill in 5. Lieutenant, you're welcome to observe from the ready area. Get a feel for how we run things here." Translation: stay out of the way. Rachel nodded once and moved to the equipment racks, where she could watch without being watched. Or so it seemed. But in the corner of her vision, she saw Marcus Webb, phone still in hand, scrolling through something on his screen. Saw Tyler mutter to Garrison, saw Garrison's almost imperceptible nod, and she saw Hannah Price approaching with a water bottle and a smile too friendly for someone who just watched Rachel humiliate one of her colleagues. "That was impressive," Hannah said quietly. "Tyler's not used to getting dropped so fast." "I'm sure." Rachel took the water bottle, didn't drink from it yet. "You're Sergeant Price?" "Hannah, and yeah, I run the admin side of training ops here. If you need anything, gear, range time, whatever, I'm your person." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Fair warning, Garrison's crew can be intense. They don't always react well to new people." "I can handle intense." "I'm sure you can." Hannah's eyes were kind, concerned, believable. "Just be careful around Bay 3. That's their private training area. Garrison doesn't like interruptions there." Rachel filed that away. "Noted. Thanks for the heads up." Hannah smiled and walked away, and Rachel watched her go, watched how she stopped to talk to Marcus, how Marcus showed her something on his phone, How they both glanced back at Rachel before laughing. Too casual, too coordinated. Rachel pulled out her phone, typed another message to Torres. Made contact. Garrison crew knows I'm a threat. Expect escalation. Brennan briefing tomorrow morning? The reply, 0800 sharp. His office. He has intel you need to see. Stay visible and safe until then. Rachel frowned. What intel could Brennan have already? She'd only been on base 3 hours. Unless he'd been investigating too. Outside the training wing, Master Chief Paul Brennan stood in the parking lot, phone to his ear, talking to someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Kelly, he said quietly, this is Master Chief Paul Brennan. We met once at a transfer ceremony in San Diego. I need to ask you some questions about Bay 3. The voice on the other end was hesitant, young, damaged. I can't talk about that. I signed papers. They said if I talked, They lied, Brennan said. And the papers you signed aren't worth the ink. Kelly, I'm investigating Master Sergeant Garrison. I have a female SEAL candidate on base right now, and I think she's his next target. But I need to know what happened to you. I need to understand the pattern. Silence stretched across the line. Then quietly, how did you find me? Your transfer orders cited personal reasons. I pulled your medical records. 3 ER visits in 2 months before you separated. Anxiety attacks, insomnia, PTSD markers. His voice gentled. Kelly, you were a good sailor. Top marks. Recommendations for advancement. Then suddenly you're working at a grocery store in San Diego and never wearing your uniform again. That doesn't happen without a reason. The reason, Kelly said, her voice breaking, is that I went to Bay 3 because Sergeant Price told me Master Chief Brennan wanted to see me. Except you weren't there. Garrison was. And Brooks. And Webb with his camera. And they said it was just for training documentation. That everyone did it. That if I cooperated, it would stay private. But it didn't. No. 2 weeks later, when I tried to report Tyler for harassment, Garrison showed me the video. Told me if I filed any complaints, it would end up on every computer on base. That I'd be the joke, the slut, the woman who wanted it. Her breath hitched. So I left, took a discharge, ran away. Brennan's hand tightened on the phone. Kelly, I need you to know something. What happened wasn't your fault. You didn't fail. The system failed you, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't fail anyone else. How? By doing what I should have done 30 years ago when I saw this same pattern at Camp Pendleton. By building a case so airtight that they can't bury it. By finding every victim and giving them a voice. He paused. But I need your help. I need you to tell me everything. Dates, details, any other women who went through the same thing. Another long silence. Then, there were 11 of us that I know about. Some left like me. Others stayed but transferred to different assignments. One tried to kill herself. Kelly's voice strengthened. If you're really going after him, if you can really stop this, I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise you, Kelly, he's done. I just need 48 hours to build the case. After he hung up, Brennan sat in his truck, staring at the training facility. He'd made a promise to a young woman whose life had been destroyed by predators wearing the uniform he'd served under for 40 years. Now he had to keep it. He pulled out a notebook, started writing names. Kelly Lang, 11 others. Garrison, Brooks, Webb, Price. The network was bigger than he'd thought, more organized, more protected. But protection only worked when people looked the away. And Brennan was done looking away. He started the truck and drove toward the base legal office. Time to call in some favors from people who still believed in oaths. That evening, Rachel stood in her quarters, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Private Chen, BOQ room 147. Please come. It's urgent. Rachel didn't recognize the name, but something about the message felt desperate. She grabbed her jacket and walked 3 buildings over to the bachelor officer quarters. Room 147 was at the end of a dimly lit hallway. Rachel knocked softly. The door cracked open. A young face peered out, Asian features, maybe 22, eyes red from crying. "Lieutenant Kellerman? That's me. Are you Private Chen?" The door opened wider. "Amy Chen. I heard you stood up to Garrison today, that you dropped Brooks in front of everyone." Rachel stepped inside. The room was military sparse but lived in. Photos of family, a small flag, everything neat except for the bed, which looked like Amy had been lying there for hours. "What's going on, Private?" Amy's hands twisted together. 3 months ago, Sergeant Price told me I had to go to Bay 3 for gear compliance check. She said it was routine. But when I got there, it wasn't routine. Garrison was there. Brooks. Webb with his camera. Rachel felt ice settle in her stomach. What happened? They didn't assault me, not physically, but they made me say things, do things, on camera. They said it was for training purposes, that they documented all instruction now. But the things they made me say, Amy's voice broke. And then 2 weeks ago, when Brooks cornered me in the equipment room and I tried to report it, Garrison showed me the video. Told me if I said anything, everyone would think I'd wanted it, that I'd begged for it. She pulled out a USB drive from her pocket. "I stole this from Webb's locker last week. I think there are more videos on it, more women, but I'm too scared to give it to anyone official. If you use it, please don't say my name. Please." Rachel took the USB, felt its weight like a grenade. "Amy, I need you to understand something. If I use this, there will be an investigation. You'll probably have to testify eventually. I know, but if you're the one leading it, if you're the one fighting them, maybe I'll be brave enough." Amy looked up, eyes desperate. "Are you? Are you going to fight them?" Rachel thought about Kelly Lang, about the photos on the corkboard, about the camera timestamp 9 minutes off. "Yeah," she said quietly, "I'm going to fight them, and I'm going to win." After she left Amy's room, Rachel walked back to her quarters, but instead of going inside, she kept walking. Toward the training wing, toward Bay 3, she needed to see it, needed to understand the battlefield before the battle. The base was quiet at 2200 hours, a few sailors moving between buildings, but no one paying attention to a female officer walking with purpose. Rachel reached the training wing, found the loading dock door propped open with tape over the latch, probably for smoke breaks. She slipped inside. The corridor was dark, but her eyes adjusted quickly. She moved heel-toe, silent, controlled, the way she'd moved through Iraqi bunkers. Bay 3's door was locked, but Rachel had learned to pick locks in recon school. 30 seconds later, she was inside. The space was smaller than the main training area. Mats on the floor, equipment racks, nothing obviously wrong. But Rachel's instincts screamed. She found the storage closet at the back, opened it carefully. Behind stacks of training pads, she found a mini fridge. Inside, VHS tapes. Dozens of them, each labeled with dates and initials. May 15th, 1998, SP. June 3rd, 1998, MC. July 20th, 1998, KL. Rachel's hands shook. She pulled out her phone, photographed every tape, every label, made sure the metadata tagged location and time. Evidence. She was about to close the fridge when she heard voices outside. Close. Getting closer. "Told you Friday's better. More time to set up." Garrison's voice. "Hannah says the SEAL bitch has been asking questions," Tyler said. "We should move this up. Handle her before she becomes a problem." Rachel's heart spiked, but she didn't panic. She moved fast and silent, deeper into the closet, behind equipment racks, curling into a space barely large enough for her body. Phone on silent, knife in hand. The bay door opened. Lights flickered on. I'm telling you, she's not going to fall for the standard approach, Marcus said. She's trained. She knows patterns. Then we use something she doesn't expect, Garrison replied. Hannah brings her here tomorrow night, tells her Master Chief Brennan wants to meet privately, discuss her role, off the record. Sound reasonable? Using Brennan's name? Tyler sounded uncertain. That old man's connected. If he finds out, he won't. He thinks women don't belong in the teams anyway. He'll believe she misunderstood, got the wrong message. And by the time he figures it out, we'll have our insurance. Rachel forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly, through her nose. They were 10 feet away. What about the tapes? Marcus asked. Should we move them? Nah, nobody knows about the fridge except us. And even if someone found them, who's going to believe we kept evidence of our own crimes right here? It's too obvious. That's the beauty. Hide in plain sight. Garrison's footsteps moved toward the storage closet. Rachel coiled, ready. If he opened that door, she'd have 2 seconds to decide, fight or talk her way out. The door started to open. Then, from outside the bay, Master Sergeant Garrison, you in there? Garrison froze. Who's that? Sergeant Denton, sir. Duty NCO. Got a situation with the vehicle bay. Need you to sign off on some paperwork. Garrison swore under his breath. Yeah, coming. Brooks, Webb, let's go. We'll handle this tomorrow. The lights went off. The door closed. Rachel stayed absolutely still for 5 full minutes, counting heartbeats, making sure they were really gone. Then she moved. Out of the closet, out of the bay, out of the building, back into the Arizona night where the air tasted like freedom and her legs shook with adrenaline finally released. She had everything she needed. Photos of the tapes, Amy's USB, overheard confession of their plan. Tomorrow she'd brief Brennan. Together they'd build the trap, and Garrison's crew would walk right into it. Miles away in a small apartment off base, Master Chief Paul Brennan sat at his kitchen table, cleaning his old service pistol. A 1911 he'd carried through 3 wars and never fired in anger. Until maybe tomorrow. He'd spent the evening making phone calls, old contacts, people who owed him favors. A forensic tech who could process evidence off book. A JAG lawyer named Commander Patricia Walsh, who specialized in sexual assault cases. A Navy investigator named Sarah Torres, who'd believed him back in '71, even when no one else did. Getting the team ready, just in case. Because his instincts, trained over 30 years, honed in jungles and deserts and mountains, told him tomorrow was going to be the day. The lieutenant was going to make her move, and Garrison was going to make his. And Brennan was going to have to choose between his pension and his conscience. He'd already chosen. He reassembled the pistol, loaded it, tucked it in a holster that hadn't seen use since Grenada. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not to any particular god, just to the universe, to fate, to whatever force decided which soldiers lived and which ones died. I'm too old for this, he said to his empty apartment, but I guess I'm doing it anyway. So if you're listening, a little help would be appreciated. No answer came, but then again, none ever did. You just had to walk into the fire and hope you walked out the other side. The Arizona sun rose like an angry god over Joint Base Ironwood, painting everything in shades of copper and gold that would have been beautiful if Rachel Kellerman had been capable of noticing beauty that morning. She'd slept 3 hours, maybe less. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the labels on those tapes. KLS, PMC. Women with faces, with names, with lives that had been violated and then used as weapons against them. Rachel had watched worse things in combat, had seen bodies torn apart by artillery, had put her crosshairs on human faces and squeezed the trigger 12 times, watching through her scope as life became death in the space between heartbeats. But this was different. Those had been enemies. This was betrayal from within. Wolves wearing the same uniform, speaking the same oaths, and using them as camouflage. She checked her gear one more time. Body camera disguised as a watch, fully charged. Phone set to auto-upload every photo and video to Torres's secure server. Knife in boot. And tucked into her waistband, something she'd sworn she'd never carry again after leaving the Corps. Her personal Sig Sauer P226, the one that had been with her through Desert Storm. She wasn't planning to use it, but planning for the best while preparing for the worst had kept her alive this long. 800 hours. Time to meet her official mentor. Master Chief Paul Brennan's office was tucked in a corner of the admin building, small and sparse in the way of men who'd spent their lives deployed. A desk that had seen decades of service, filing cabinets that probably predated the base itself. One photograph on the wall, a SEAL team from what looked like the Vietnam era, young men with hard eyes and weapons that belonged in museums now. Brennan sat behind the desk, and when Rachel knocked, he looked up with eyes that saw too much. "Lieutenant Kellerman," he said, standing with a slight grunt. "Master Chief Paul Brennan, close the door and have a seat. We need to talk." Rachel did, immediately alert. His tone wasn't the formal mentor-student dynamic she'd expected. "I read your file 3 times," he began without preamble. "Marine Scout Sniper, 12 confirmed kills in Desert Storm. Volunteered for the SEAL pilot program even though you had to know it would make you a target." He leaned back. "So my first question is, why?" "Because I'm better at this than most of the men who get to do it. And because if I don't, the next woman who wants to won't have a path to follow." Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "In 1968, I watched a Viet Cong sniper kill 5 of my teammates. She was 20 years old, maybe younger. Better than any shooter I've ever seen, before or since. She taught me never to underestimate anyone based on what they look like." He paused. "But here's what I didn't learn until 30 years later. The lesson doesn't matter if the system's designed to ignore it." "You think the system's designed to fail me?" "I think the system's designed to protect itself, and you're a threat to how it operates." He pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. "Which brings me to my second question. What do you know about Master Sergeant Derek Garrison?" Rachel's pulse quickened. "He runs the CQB training program. Charismatic, popular. Why?" "Because I've been investigating him since yesterday." Brennan opened the folder. Inside were photographs, the morale board with degrading pictures, maintenance logs, duty rosters. "I recognize the pattern. I saw this same thing 30 years ago at Camp Pendleton. A charismatic leader, loyal enforcers, someone to provide social cover, and a system that looks the other way." Rachel stared at the evidence. This old SEAL had been running a parallel investigation. "How long have you known?" "I suspected the moment I watched how his crew moved around you yesterday, like wolves testing a fence line." Brennan tapped one of the photos. "I confirmed it last night when I spoke to Seaman Kelly Lang." Rachel's hand went to her jacket where Amy's USB was hidden. K.L. Kelly Lang, 22 years old when they targeted her in Bay 3, transferred off base citing personal reasons. Working at a grocery store in San Diego now, gave up her Navy career. His jaw tightened. "I spent 3 hours convincing her to talk. She gave me names, 5 other women, all victimized, all forced out rather than fight, but all willing to testify if someone goes first." "Someone did go first," Rachel said. She pulled out Amy's USB. "Private Amy Chen. Gave me this last night. She thinks there are more videos on it." Brennan took the drive, studied it like it was a live grenade. "Then we have our evidence. But evidence isn't enough. We need them caught in the act, on record, with federal witnesses." "They're planning something for tonight," Rachel said. "I was in Bay 3 last night, heard them talking. They're going to use your name to lure me there. Hannah Price will tell me you want a private meeting." Brennan's eyebrows rose. "You were in Bay 3? "Found the tapes, photographed everything, but I didn't take anything, didn't want to compromise the chain of evidence." She showed him her phone photos. There are at least 30 victims, Chief, maybe more. Brennan studied the photos, his face hardening with each swipe. When he looked up, his eyes held cold, controlled fury. I reported something like this once, he said quietly. 1971, Camp Pendleton. A major was abusing female Marines. I documented everything, went through proper channels. You know what happened? They buried it. Worse, they promoted him, and they sent me to count supplies in Guam for 3 years. He closed the folder. I learned then that the system doesn't reward truth. It punishes it. Unless you have evidence so overwhelming, so public, that ignoring it costs more than acknowledging it. Which means we need to catch them in the act, Rachel said, with witnesses, with documentation they can't bury. Which means you're planning to walk into their trap tonight. It wasn't a question. Rachel nodded anyway. Good, Brennan said, because so am I. He stood, moved to his filing cabinet, pulled out a locked case. Inside was his old 1911 pistol and a compact recording device, military grade. I made calls last night. NCIS agent Sarah Torres is standing by with a tactical team at a hotel 20 minutes from base. JAG lawyer Commander Patricia Walsh is ready to file charges the moment we have evidence. And a forensic tech I trust is prepared to process everything, including this USB. Rachel felt something ease in her chest. She'd been prepared to do this alone. But having backup, having someone who understood the mission, changed everything. Why are you helping me? She asked. You're 6 months from retirement. This could cost you everything. Brennan looked at the photograph on his wall, at the young men who died in that jungle. Because I'm tired of counting the cost of doing nothing. Because every time I played it safe, someone else paid the price. He turned back to her. That woman in the tree taught me something else, something I didn't realize until now. She wasn't brave because she was fearless. She was brave because she knew the risks and climbed that tree anyway. He held out his hand. So let's climb, Lieutenant, together. Rachel shook it, feeling calluses that matched her own. 2 operators, 2 generations, 1 mission. We need a plan, she said, already working on it. They spent the next hour planning. Brennan would stage outside Bay 3 with Torres on speed dial. The moment Garrison made his move, Brennan would come through that door with enough force to make them think the entire base was responding. Rachel would go in wired, body camera, audio recorder, panic button disguised as a pen. But here's the thing, Brennan said, showing her a tablet. I've been monitoring their private server since last night. How did you? 30 years of favors called in. Webb isn't as good with encryption as he thinks. He pulled up chat logs, messages between Garrison, Brooks, Webb, and Price. They're planning to have Garrison and Brooks in the room, Webb filming from the closet, Hannah as the voice of reason if you resist. Rachel read the messages, each one more damning than the last. A script, a procedure, a system refined through repetition. One message from Garrison stood out. If she fights, Brooks handles it. If she talks, I handle it. Either way, we get the footage. They're planning to use force if necessary, Rachel said, which means weapons, which means this could go sideways fast, which means we need insurance. Brennan pulled out 2 devices, panic buttons disguised as pens. Military grade. Press the clip 3 times fast, sends an immediate alert to Torres with GPS coordinates. She'll have that tactical team here in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time when things go bad. Then we make sure they don't go that bad. Brennan's expression was grim. You go in wired. I'll be staged outside with Torres on speed dial. The moment they make their move, the moment they say or do anything actionable, I come through that door. And if they have lookouts, then they learn that old SEALs are mean SEALs. His smile was cold. I've been in worse situations, Lieutenant. This is just another Tuesday. Rachel tested the panic button. 3 clicks, fast. Simple enough for an emergency. What about evidence collection? She asked. If I can get them talking, Get them to admit to previous victims. Your body camera is admissible in court, military and civilian. Anything they say, anything they do, it's captured with timestamp and metadata. Brennan pulled out one more item, a small blade, razor sharp, disguised as a pen. And this is for worst case. If they restrain you, if you need to cut free, this'll do it. Rachel took the blade, appreciated its weight. You've thought of everything. I've had 30 years to think about what I wish I'd had the first time I tried to take down a predator. His eyes met hers. Don't make my mistakes, Lieutenant. Don't go in thinking you can handle everything alone. We're a team. You're the bait, I'm the hammer, and Torres is the anvil. Trust the system we built, not the system that failed us. Roger that, Chief. They spent another hour rehearsing. Brennan timed how long it would take him to get from his staging position to Bay 3. 45 seconds at a run. They practiced the panic signal, practiced verbal cues Rachel could use to indicate escalation. By the time they finished, Rachel felt as prepared as anyone could be for walking into a trap. At 1700 hours, Brennan left to brief Torres in person. Rachel returned to her quarters, tried to eat dinner, couldn't. Instead, she sat on her bunk and wrote a letter. To Kelly Lang. Dear Seaman Lang, you don't know me, but Master Chief Brennan told me what happened to you. I want you to know that what's about to happen tonight isn't your fault. It never was. The men who hurt you made choices. They chose to abuse their power. They chose to victimize you. They chose to let you leave rather than face accountability. I'm choosing something different. I'm choosing to stand where you stood, to face what you faced, but this time with backup and evidence and a determination to make sure they never do this again. This is for you, for Amy Chen, for the 11 others, for every woman who left the Navy because staying meant living with what they did. Your service mattered. Your courage in speaking to Master Chief Brennan matters. And when this is over, when they're in prison where they belong, I hope you can find some peace. Respectfully, Lieutenant Rachel Kellerman. She sealed the letter, put it in her desk drawer. If everything went right, she'd mail it tomorrow with news of victory. If everything went wrong, someone would find it eventually. 2,000 hours, 1 hour to go. Rachel changed into her standard duty uniform. The body camera watch went on her left wrist. The panic button pen clipped to her pocket. The blade pen tucked into her boot alongside her knife. Phone in her right pocket, fully charged, connected to Torres's server. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a warrior preparing for battle. Not the kind with guns and explosions, the kind where the battlefield was a room, and the weapons were truth and evidence, and the willingness to stand when standing was dangerous. All right, Kelly, she said to her reflection, let's get you justice. The morning had passed in performance. Rachel attended training sessions, laughed at Garrison's jokes, acted exactly like someone who didn't know she was being hunted. Tyler Brooks partnered with her again for drills, and this time Rachel let him get a few holds in, let him feel superior, fed his ego just enough that he'd underestimate her when it mattered. Not bad, ma'am, he said. You're learning. Good teacher, Rachel replied, forcing a smile. Marcus Webb filmed everything. Phone always angled just wrong. Rachel made sure to give him nothing useful. No vulnerable moments, no shots that could be edited. And at lunch, right on schedule, Hannah Price approached with her concerned expression and sympathetic voice. Hey, Lieutenant, got a minute? Rachel looked up from her meal. Sure, what's up? Hannah glanced around, checking for eavesdroppers. Look, I probably shouldn't say anything, but Master Chief Brennan asked me to pass along a message. He wants to meet with you tonight. 2,100 hours, Bay 3. Rachel let confusion cross her face. Bay 3? Why not his office? He said something about privacy, about needing to discuss your evaluation without it being official. Hannah leaned closer. Between you and me, I think he's concerned about your performance. The Brooks thing yesterday, Tyler's got friends in high places. Brennan might be trying to give you a heads up before it becomes a problem. Perfect bait. concern for her career, a chance to fix things before they went wrong. Did he say what specifically he wanted to discuss? Just that it was important, off the record. Hannah's smile was kind, encouraging. He's old school, you know. Doesn't trust phones or emails. Likes to handle things face to face. Rachel pretended to think about it. Okay, 2,100 hours, Bay 3. I'll be there. Great, and Lieutenant? Hannah touched her arm. Don't stress. Brennan's tough, but he's fair. If he's reaching out, it means he sees potential. Rachel watched Hannah walk away, watched her immediately pull out her phone and type something, watched the smile that crossed her face when she got a response. Setting the trap, confirming the prey was coming. Good. Bay 3 looked exactly the same as it had 2 nights before. Fluorescent lights humming slightly, mats spread across the floor, privacy film making the windows opaque. But knowing what she knew now, the room felt different. Smaller, more like a cage. Rachel entered at 20:55 hours, 5 minutes early, the way any professional would. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like finality. She was alone, for now. Her watch camera was recording. Her phone was streaming. Somewhere outside, Brennan was in position, checking his own equipment, probably praying to gods he didn't believe in that this would work. 2,100 hours came and went. No Brennan, no meeting. Of course not, because this was never about Brennan. At 21:03, the door opened again. Master Sergeant Derek Garrison stepped through, and the expression on his face when he saw Rachel was almost worth the entire risk. Surprise, then calculation, then a slow smile that held no warmth. Lieutenant Kellerman, he said, closing the door behind him. Rachel heard the soft click of a lock engaging. Glad you could make it. Sergeant Price said Master Chief Brennan wanted to meet here. Rachel kept her voice level, confused but not afraid. Not yet. Is he coming? Brennan? Garrison laughed, pulling out his phone and typing something. No, Lieutenant, this meeting is just for us. Hannah may have simplified things, but you're here now, and that's what matters. The door behind Rachel opened. Tyler Brooks stepped through, moving to block her exit. Then Marcus Webb, phone already raised, red recording light blinking. Rachel felt her heart rate spike but controlled it. Everything was being captured. Every word, every movement. I don't understand, she said, letting confusion bleed into concern. What's going on? What's going on, Garrison said, circling slowly, is that you've been making waves since you got here. Embarrassing my people, acting like you're something special because the Navy gave you a participation trophy. I was assigned here for training. You were assigned here because some admiral wanted good PR, female SEAL, historic, groundbreaking. His voice dripped with contempt. But we both know the truth. You're a diversity hire, a checkbox. And checkboxes don't get to walk around like they've earned respect. Rachel's jaw tightened. Good. Let him see anger. I've earned everything I have, Garrison. Desert Storm, 12 confirmed kills, Scout Sniper Honor Graduate. What have you earned besides the loyalty of thugs? Tyler took a step forward, fists clenched. Garrison held up a hand, stopping him. See, that attitude? That's what we're here to correct. He pulled out his phone, swiped through something, turned the screen toward her. Recognize these? The screen showed thumbnails of videos. Rachel recognized Bay 3 in each one, recognized different women in each thumbnail. That's a collection, Garrison continued. Insurance, you could call it. Women who came through here thinking they were special, thinking they could challenge how we operate. Each one learned humility. Each one decided that keeping quiet was better than having certain footage become public. You're admitting to blackmail, Rachel said quietly. I'm admitting to having leverage. There's a difference, Garrison smiled. And now we're going to add you to the collection. You're going to say some things, do some things, all on camera, nice and clear. And then you're going to finish your rotation here, fail your SEAL evaluation, and transfer out quietly. Because if you don't, he gestured to the phone, your Navy career, your reputation, everything you've worked for, it all becomes a file on the internet, forever. Rachel felt the rage building, but she channeled it into performance. And if I refuse? Then things get unpleasant. Tyler cracked his knuckles, the sound obscenely loud. We prefer cooperation, but we're flexible. Marcus spoke up from behind his camera. Just say the words, ma'am. Make it easy. Everybody else did eventually. This was it. The confession. The threat. All captured on camera, audio clear, context unmistakable. Rachel reached for the panic button pen, and Garrison's hand shot out, faster than she expected, grabbing her wrist. What's that? Some kind of recorder? His other hand went to her pocket, found the pen, pulled it out. His eyes narrowed. Nice try, Lieutenant. Tyler grabbed her other arm, twisted it behind her back. Rachel didn't resist yet. Let them feel confident. Garrison examined the pen, recognized it. Military panic button, which means, he looked around, you came prepared, which means you knew, which means someone told you. His face darkened. Was it Hannah? Did she crack? Does it matter? Rachel's voice was steady despite the pressure on her arm. You just confessed to multiple felonies on camera. My camera. She nodded toward her watch. And the footage is already uploaded, already in federal hands. You're done, Garrison. For a moment, just a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened into something ugly and desperate. If we're done anyway, then we've got nothing to lose. Brooks, Holder, Webb, keep filming. At least we'll have one more for the collection before this all goes to hell. Tyler's grip tightened, pain shooting through Rachel's shoulder. This was escalating faster than planned. 30 seconds since the confession. Brennan wouldn't reach her for another 15 seconds at least. 15 seconds was a long time. Garrison stepped close, and his hand went not to her face, but to her throat. The grip was professional, practiced, cutting off air without leaving marks. Rachel's vision started to tunnel. You came here thinking you were brave, Garrison whispered. But brave doesn't matter when you're alone. Brennan isn't coming. Torres isn't coming. It's just you and us, and we've done this enough times to know exactly how far we can go. Tyler's hand covered her mouth. Marcus kept filming. Rachel felt her consciousness starting to fade. The panic button was gone. The watch camera would show her death, but not prevent it. She'd miscalculated. The door exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Master Chief Paul Brennan came through like an avenging angel, 63 years old and moving like he was 30. His eyes swept the room in microseconds, registered the hand on Rachel's throat, the knife now visible in Garrison's other hand, the camera still recording. Stand down! Brennan's voice carried 30 years of command authority. All of you, hands where I can see them, now! For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Tyler, recovering from shock, made the stupidest decision of his life. He lunged at Brennan. Brennan's response was textbook SEAL close quarters combat. He sidestepped Tyler's charge, used the bigger man's momentum against him, and delivered a strike to the back of Tyler's knee that sent him crashing to the mat. Before Tyler could recover, Brennan had him in a chokehold, not the flashy kind, but the efficient kind that cut blood flow to the brain. Tyler struggled for maybe 5 seconds before going limp. Unconscious, not dead, Brennan said calmly, letting the body down. Anyone else want to test whether old age has made me soft? Rachel, released from Tyler's grip, had already retrieved her blade from her boot. She held it in a fighter's grip. Garrison still had his knife. His eyes darted between Brennan and Rachel, calculating odds. Don't, Rachel said quietly. You're already looking at 20 years for blackmail and sexual coercion. Add assault with a deadly weapon on a federal officer? You'll die in prison. Federal officer? Garrison's laugh was bitter. She's under federal investigation orders, Brennan said, working with NCIS, which makes her federally protected, which means if you so much as scratch her, you're not just fighting the Navy, you're fighting the entire United States government. The color drained from Garrison's face. This wasn't a local problem he could bury. This was federal, permanent. The knife dropped from his hand, clattered on the mat. Smart choice, Brennan said. He pulled out his phone. Torres, we're green. Bay 3, situation contained. Multiple subjects in custody. Through the speaker. Roger that. Tactical team is 3 minutes out. Good work, Master Chief. Marcus Webb, who'd been filming everything, slowly lowered his camera. His face was white. I want to cooperate, he said quickly. I have everything. All the files, all the conversations. I'll give you everything. You'll give us everything anyway, Rachel said, her voice hoarse from the choking. The question is whether you cooperate and get leniency or resist and get buried. I'll cooperate, Marcus said immediately. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Base security responding to the panic button Rachel had managed to trigger before Garrison grabbed her. The cavalry was coming. Rachel looked at Brennan, saw him breathing hard, favoring his left side. Chief, you okay? Old injury acting up, nothing serious, but his hand went to his ribs, protective. You? Bruised, angry, alive, she smiled, feeling the adrenaline fade, feeling the reality of what they'd accomplished. We got them, Chief. On camera, everything. We got them, he agreed. Then quietly, your first time running point on an op like this? Yeah, Desert Storm was different. Clear enemies, clear objectives. This, she looked at Garrison, who sat on the floor with his head in his hands. This was harder. Always is. Fighting the enemy outside is easy. Fighting the enemy wearing your own uniform? Brennan shook his head. That takes a different kind of courage. The door burst open again. Base security poured in, followed by men and women in tactical gear marked with NCIS badges. At the center was Agent Sarah Torres herself, late 40s, Latina, with eyes that missed nothing. She took in the scene. Tyler unconscious, Garrison sitting defeated, Marcus holding his camera like a confession, Rachel and Brennan standing together like soldiers after a battle. Lieutenant Kellerman, Torres said. Master Chief Brennan, status? 3 subjects secured and cooperative, Brennan reported. Multiple confessions captured on audio and video. Evidence of systematic sexual coercion, blackmail and conspiracy. And 1 more suspect, Sergeant Hannah Price, who should be secured immediately. Already handled. We picked her up 15 minutes ago when she tried to leave base. Torres nodded to her team. Bag and tag everything. I want every device, every recording, every piece of evidence cataloged and secured. This is going to trial, and I want it airtight. As NCIS agents moved efficiently through the room, Rachel felt something in her chest release. The tension she'd been carrying since seeing those tape labels. The fear that this would somehow go wrong. But it hadn't. The system they'd built, her and Brennan and Torres and all the people who'd believed when believing was hard, had worked. Torres pulled Rachel and Brennan aside. I need statements from both of you. Full debrief, every detail. You'll have it, Rachel said. But first, Kelly Lang and Amy Chen and the other victims, they need to know it's over. I'll make the calls personally, Torres promised. But Rachel, there's going to be fallout. Garrison's lawyer will argue entrapment. Defense will try to discredit your testimony. This is going to get ugly before it gets resolved. Let it get ugly, Brennan said. We have evidence, we have confessions, and we have 30-plus victims who are ready to testify now that someone finally listened. Torres smiled, sharp and satisfied. I like how you think, Master Chief. The NCIS team finished their collection. Garrison, Tyler, and Marcus were led out in handcuffs, each one looking smaller than they had an hour ago. As they filed past, Garrison looked at Rachel one last time. You've destroyed everything. My career, my life, all of it. For what? For women who couldn't hack the pressure. Rachel met his eyes, her voice cold and clear. No, for women who shouldn't have had to. There's a difference. He was gone then, swallowed by federal custody. Brennan touched her elbow. Come on, Lieutenant. Let's get you checked by medical. Then we write this up. They walked out of Bay 3 together. Tomorrow, Torres said, they tear it apart. Pull out the hidden cameras, everything. Convert it into something better. But tonight, they just ended its reign of terror. Outside, the Arizona night was cool and clear. Rachel breathed deep, tasting freedom and desert dust. Chief, she said, thank you for believing me, for risking everything. Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then, in Vietnam, I watched good people die because someone with power made bad decisions. I swore if I ever had power, I'd use it differently. He looked at her. Took me 30 years to keep that promise. Thanks for giving me the chance. They walked in silence, two warriors who just won a battle that most people would never know about. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Legacy. The sun hadn't risen yet when Rachel Kellerman found herself sitting in a windowless conference room that smelled like stale coffee and government bureaucracy, telling her story for the fourth time in 6 hours. Agent Sarah Torres sat across the table, notepad filled with precise handwriting, recorder running. Beside her, Commander Patricia Walsh from JAG, 50-something, sharp eyes behind government-issue glasses, took notes on a laptop. Let's go over the timeline one more time, Torres said, voice patient despite the hour. You entered Bay 3 at 20:05 5 hours. Master Sergeant Garrison arrived at 21:03. Walk me through exactly what he said about the previous victims. Rachel's throat was raw from talking, but she repeated it again, word for word, pulling from memory trained to retain detail under stress. Every sentence Garrison had spoken, every threat Tyler had made. The moment Marcus admitted they had a collection, Walsh typed furiously, occasionally stopping to ask clarification questions. When Garrison showed you the phone with the video thumbnails, could you identify specific individuals? 3 of them. I'd seen their photos in the admin corridor, the morale board with degrading captions. 2 others I'd seen around base. Rachel paused, remembering the faces. Young, scared, violated. But I recognized Bay 3 in every single frame. Same room, same setup, same predators. That's good. That establishes pattern and premeditation. Walsh glanced at Torres. Combined with Webb's devices and physical evidence from Bay 3, we're looking at conspiracy charges that'll stick. Torres nodded, then turned back to Rachel. Now the hard part. Garrison's attorney is going to argue entrapment. They'll say you deliberately put yourself in a compromising situation to manufacture charges. How do you respond? Rachel had been expecting this. She'd run through the answer a dozen times, making sure every word was precise. I was following up on credible evidence of ongoing criminal activity. I observed suspicious patterns, degrading photographs posted publicly, maintenance logs showing systematic camera manipulation, and witness testimony from Seaman Lang describing an assault in Bay 3. When Sergeant Price approached me with an invitation that matched the pattern of previous assaults, I made the tactical decision to document the crime in progress while coordinating with federal authorities and establishing proper backup protocol. At no point did I encourage, suggest, or facilitate any criminal behavior. I simply provided the opportunity for subjects to commit crimes they'd already committed multiple times. Walsh's lips curved slightly. You've been rehearsing that. I've been living it, ma'am. Big difference. Good answer. Stick to it exactly like that when you testify. Walsh closed her laptop. We'll have preliminary hearings within 48 hours. Full trial probably 3 to 6 months out. You'll be called as primary witness. Torres stood, stretching. You should know, We've already made contact with 6 of the previous victims. 2 are willing to testify immediately. The others need time, but they're considering it now that Garrison's in custody. Kelly Lang is drafting a victim impact statement as we speak. Rachel felt something ease in her chest. 6 women, 6 voices that had been silenced, now preparing to speak. What about Hannah Price? Sergeant Price is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's provided passwords to Garrison's encrypted servers, locations of backup files, and detailed testimony about how the operation functioned. Torres's expression hardened. She's also admitted to recruiting 11 women over a 2-year period. But there's something else you need to know. Torres pulled out a folder. 2 days after her arrest, Hannah attempted suicide in her cell. She survived, barely. Left a note. I thought if I became like them, they'd stop hurting me. Instead, I became the hurt. She's now in psychiatric care, testifying remotely. Her case has open discussions about how trauma victims become perpetrators. Rachel felt the complexity settle over her. Hannah wasn't pure villain or pure victim. She was the gray space the system refused to acknowledge. A knock on the door. Master Chief Paul Brennan stepped in, looking tired but alert. He'd spent the last 6 hours in his own debrief. Ladies, he said with a nod, how's our star witness holding up? Better than expected, Torres said. Most people would be a wreck. Lieutenant Kellerman's treating it like another day at the office. That's because she's a professional. Brennan pulled up a chair, sat carefully. Any word on the Colonel's situation? Rachel's head snapped up. Colonel's situation? Torres and Walsh exchanged glances. Walsh spoke first. When we analyzed the encrypted server Webb gave us access to, we found evidence of 2 field-grade officers who were aware of Garrison's activities. Colonel Robert Morrison and Major Thomas Hayes. They weren't direct participants, but they knew what was happening and took steps to protect Garrison when complaints were filed. The room temperature seemed to drop. How high does this go? Rachel asked quietly. As far as we can prove? Morrison and Hayes. Both are being relieved of command pending investigation. Morrison's looking at obstruction of justice. Hayes might face conspiracy. Torres leaned against the table. But Lieutenant, you need to understand something. When you take down a network like this, there's always fallout. People who benefited from the system, who look the other way, they're all going to be scrutinized. Some careers will end. The entire culture of this base is going to be under a microscope. Good, Rachel said. It should be. Maybe, but it also means you're going to make enemies, powerful ones, people who think you destroyed good men over one mistake. Torres's voice was gentle, but firm. Your SEAL qualification? That's probably over. The program will be shelved pending review. You'll be reassigned, likely to a staff position while this plays out. Your career trajectory just changed completely. Rachel absorbed this, felt the death of a dream she'd carried for years. The SEAL trident, the chance to operate at the highest level. Gone, sacrificed on the altar of doing the right thing. She looked at Brennan, saw understanding in his eyes. He'd lost his career trajectory too, back in 1971. I can live with that, Rachel said finally. What I couldn't live with is knowing I walked away when I could have stopped them. Brennan's expression softened with something that looked like pride. That's the right answer, Lieutenant. The only answer that matters. Walsh closed her notepad decisively. Then let's make sure their sacrifice means something. I'm going to build a case so airtight that Garrison and his crew spend the next 20 years in prison. And when it's over, we're going to push for systematic reforms that make sure this never happens again. Reforms like what? Rachel asked. Independent oversight for sexual assault investigations. Mandatory third-party reporting for commanders who receive complaints. Stricter penalties for retaliation. And a complete overhaul of how military law enforcement handles these cases. Walsh's smile was sharp. You've given us the ammunition, Lieutenant. Now we're going to wage war on the system that allowed this. Torres checked her watch. 0547 hours. You both need rest. We'll reconvene at 1400 for preliminary hearing prep. Lieutenant, you're officially on investigative leave. Master Chief, I know you were scheduled to retire in 6 months, but I'm staying until this is finished, Brennan interrupted. I'll take terminal leave if I have to. Come back as civilian consultant. But I started this fight. I'm seeing it through. Torres nodded. Then get some rest. Both of you. We've got a long road ahead. Rachel walked across base as dawn broke over Arizona, painting the desert in amber and gold. She should have been exhausted, but her mind was too active. She passed the training wing where Bay 3 sat dark and empty, marked with federal evidence tape. Tomorrow they'd gut it completely. Near the admin building, she found what she was looking for. The morale board where degrading photos had been displayed. It was bare now. Every photo removed. Every crude caption scraped away. The cork surface showed pinholes and tape residue, scars of what had been there. But in the center, someone had posted something new. A printed notice. If you see something, say something. Sexual assault reporting. 1-800-555-0199. Anonymous tip line. 1-800-555-0198. You are not alone. Rachel stared at it, feeling the weight of what they'd started. One investigation, one arrest. But the ripples would spread. It's a start, a voice said behind her. She turned to find Brennan approaching, coffee in each hand. He offered her one, black, military strong. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Haven't slept properly since 1968. Don't see that changing now. He sipped his coffee, staring at the board. But I keep thinking about something, about cycles. Cycles? In Vietnam, I was the young operator who thought I could change the world. Thought if I just fought hard enough, we'd win. He gestured to the board. Then I reported that major in 71. Thought if I just documented enough, the truth would matter. Learned different. So what changed? What made this time different? Brennan was quiet, watching the sun climb. You did. You came in with evidence, with federal backing, with a plan. You didn't just report the crime, you built the case. You didn't trust the system to fix itself. You forced it to pay attention. He looked at her. That's what I couldn't figure out 30 years ago. The system doesn't change because you're right. It changes because you make it more expensive to ignore you than to act. Expensive how? Federal investigation, media attention, eventually, testimony from multiple victims, evidence so overwhelming that sweeping it under the rug costs more than dealing with it. He smiled grimly. You didn't just catch predators, you caught them in a way that made protecting them impossible. That's strategy, not just courage. Rachel thought about all the pieces that had to align. Torres with federal authority, Walsh with legal expertise, Kelly Lang willing to speak after years of silence, Brennan providing backup. I couldn't have done this alone, she said. No one ever does. That's the lesson that took me too long to learn. Individual courage matters, but institutional change requires a team. He finished his coffee. Speaking of which, I got a call this morning. Admiral Richardson, my old CO. He's flying in tomorrow to personally review the case. The two-star? The one from Vietnam who approved my SEAL candidacy? The same. Brennan's expression was unreadable. He wants to meet with you. Rachel's stomach tightened. An admiral. The man who could decide her future with a signature. To tell me I'm out of the program? Maybe. Or maybe to offer you something different. Brennan started walking. Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow we face the brass. After that, we see what kind of Navy we're actually serving. Rachel did sleep, finally, falling into her rack at 800 and not waking until 1300. When she emerged, showered and in a fresh uniform, she found a message waiting. Admiral Richardson arriving 1500 hours. Report to Base Commander's conference room. Dress blues. Dress blues. Formal. Career defining. She took extra care with her uniform, the Combat Action Ribbon from Desert Storm, the Navy and Marine Corps' Achievement Medal, the Pistol Marksmanship Ribbon, a career's worth of accomplishments that might not matter anymore. At 14:45, she stood outside the conference room, heart rate elevated but controlled. This was just another op. Different terrain, same principle. Assess, adapt, accomplish. The door opened. Commander Vickers stepped out, looking haggard. "Lieutenant, the Admiral's ready." Rachel entered a room that held more brass than she'd seen since her commissioning ceremony. Base Commander Colonel Thornton at the head of the table. Agent Torres and Commander Walsh on the left. Master Chief Brennan standing at parade rest near the window. And at the center, Rear Admiral James Richardson. Late 60s, silver hair, face carved from granite and experience. He wore the trident on his chest, seal, and enough ribbons to write a history of modern naval warfare. His eyes were the color of winter ocean, and they tracked Rachel's every movement. "Lieutenant Rachel Kellerman, reporting as ordered, sir." "At ease, Lieutenant. Have a seat." Richardson's voice carried weight. "I've spent the last 4 hours reviewing every detail of your operation against Master Sergeant Garrison and his network. Read every transcript, watched every recording." Rachel sat ramrod straight, waiting for the verdict. "I'm going to be direct," Richardson continued. "Your actions over the past 72 hours were some of the most professionally executed investigation work I've seen in 40 years of service. You identified a pattern, gathered evidence, coordinated with federal authorities, established proper protocols, and executed an operation that resulted in the arrest of 3 predators and the identification of 30-plus victims. That's exceptional work." Rachel felt a flicker of hope. "However," Richardson said, and there it was, "your actions also violated approximately 17 regulations regarding proper channels, unauthorized investigations, and operational risk. You put yourself in danger without proper authorization. You operated outside your official capacity, and you made decisions that, had they gone differently, could have resulted in casualties or a failed prosecution." The hope died. Rachel kept her face neutral. Richardson stood, walked around the table, stopped directly in front of her. "Which brings me to my decision regarding your SEAL qualification status." The room held its breath. "You're out of the program." Rachel felt the words land like physical blows. Out. Finished. "Not because you failed," Richardson continued, "but because the program is being suspended for comprehensive review. We're rebuilding from the ground up, new protocols, new oversight, new culture. It'll take at least 2 years before we accept another female candidate. By then, you'll be aged out of the pipeline." "I understand, sir." Rachel's voice was steady despite the collapse inside. "I don't think you do." Richardson pulled up a chair, sat facing her at eye level, unusual for an admiral. "Lieutenant, you came here to become a SEAL, but what you did instead was more important. You exposed systematic rot we should have caught years ago. You saved lives, not with a rifle, but with courage and intelligence, and a refusal to accept that this was just how things were." He glanced at Brennan. "Master Chief Brennan has been telling me for 30 years that we need operators who can fight enemies we don't train for. Not insurgents, not foreign militaries, but corruption within our own ranks. People who use the uniform as camouflage for predation." "Sir, Richardson held up a hand. "I'm not finished. The Navy needs you, Lieutenant, not as a SEAL candidate, as something different. I'm establishing a new office within Naval Criminal Investigative Service, Special Victims Investigation Unit, military and civilian personnel operating with federal authority, specifically focused on sexual assault and harassment cases in special operations communities. We're going to clean house across every SEAL team, every special boat unit, every NSW support command." He pulled out a folder. "I want you to lead it. Lieutenant commander rank, immediate promotion. You'll report directly to NCIS Command with advisory authority to flag officers. Your job is to do what you did here. Find the predators, build the cases, and burn down the systems that protect them. Master Chief Brennan has agreed to serve as your senior advisor until his retirement. Rachel stared at the folder. This wasn't what she'd expected. This wasn't what she'd wanted. The sealed trident had been her goal for years. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I became a Marine to fight. I joined the Navy to operate. Investigation work, desk work, that's not... What you are, Brennan interrupted quietly, is someone who fights battles that need fighting, whether that's in Iraq with a rifle or in a conference room with evidence. The weapon changes. The mission doesn't. Richardson nodded. You wanted to be a SEAL because you believed in protecting people, in being excellent, in serving at the highest level. This is all of those things. It's just not what you pictured. He leaned forward. I'm not going to order you to take this position, but I am going to tell you that if you walk away, if you go back to the fleet and pretend these 3 days didn't happen, you'll spend the rest of your career wondering what you could have accomplished. Rachel looked at the folder, looked at Torres, who nodded encouragingly, at Walsh, who smiled, at Brennan, whose expression said he understood, the death of one dream, the birth of another she hadn't chosen. How many cases are pending? She asked quietly. Torres answered, across all NSW commands, we estimate between 40 and 60 cases that were either improperly investigated or not investigated at all over the past 5 years. Some are still active duty, some have already separated. All deserve justice. 40 to 60 cases. Kelly Lang times 40, times 60. Rachel opened the folder. Inside was a formal offer letter, a position description, and a list of preliminary cases. The first case file showed a photo of a young woman, 24 years old, petty officer 2nd class, assigned to SEAL Team 7, reported sexual assault by team leader, investigation closed due to insufficient evidence, victim transferred to recruiting office in Nebraska, alleged perpetrator promoted 6 months later. Rachel read the name, read the story, felt the familiar burn of rage. If I take this, she said slowly, I want complete operational independence, no chain of command interference, no one shutting down investigations because they're politically inconvenient. You'll have it, Richardson said. Federal authority means federal protection. You answer to NCIS and to me, no one else. And if I find officers at your level involved, admirals, generals, Richardson's smile was cold. Then you burn them down too. No one's above this, Lieutenant. No one. Rachel looked at the photo one more time, thought about Kelly Lang, about Amy Chen, about the 11 other women whose tapes sat in evidence lockup, about every woman who'd ever been told her assault was just boys being boys. She thought about the sealed trident she'd never wear, the dreams she'd carried since deciding the Marine Corps wasn't enough. And then she thought about what Brennan had said. The weapon changes, the mission doesn't. I'll take it, she said, on one condition. Name it. Kelly Lang, Amy Chen, and every victim in Garrison's case, they get priority access to VA benefits, mental health services, and career counseling if they want back into service. And their records get amended to show they didn't quit. They were forced out by a hostile environment that we failed to protect them from. Torres smiled. Walsh nodded approvingly. Richardson stood, extended his hand. Done. Welcome to your new command, Lieutenant Commander Kellerman. Rachel stood, shook his hand, felt the weight settle on her shoulders. Not the weight of a trident pin, the weight of 40 cases, 60 cases, however many were out there, hidden in bureaucracy and silence. When do I start? She asked. Yesterday, Richardson said. Your first case is already waiting. Fort Hood, Texas. Pattern matches what you found here. Female soldier, multiple complaints, all dismissed. She's contacted NCIS asking specifically for you. Brennan moved beside her. Fort Hood. That's Army jurisdiction. They won't like Navy poking around. They don't have to like it, Richardson said. Lieutenant Commander Kellerman has joint service authority. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. If it involves special operations personnel, it's her mandate. Then I guess I'm going to Texas, Rachel said. We're going to Texas, Brennan corrected. You need an advisor. I need one more mission before I retire for real. Besides, I hear the barbecue is excellent. 2 days later, Rachel stood in Bay 3 one final time. The room was completely empty now. Every piece of equipment removed. Every surface scrubbed. Almost. On the wall where the camera had been hidden, someone had mounted a plaque. Bronze, official, permanent. In memory of the survivors who found their voice. In honor of those who listened. This room once harbored silence and shame. Now it stands as testimony that truth, however painful, will always matter more than comfort. Bay 3, dedicated November 15th, 1998, to the principle that justice delayed is not justice denied. Rachel read it 3 times, feeling the weight of what it represented. This room had been a factory of trauma. Now it was a memorial. Not perfect, not enough, but something. Footsteps behind her. Brennan carrying 2 duffel bags. Ready? We've got a flight to Texas in 4 hours. Yeah, Rachel turned from the plaque. Hey, Chief, what happened to the woman in Vietnam, the sniper? Brennan was quiet for a long moment. I carried her picture for 30 years, kept it in my wallet as a reminder. Then 2 months ago, I found a Vietnamese memorial website, put her face through databases. He pulled out his phone, showed Rachel a translated webpage. Her name was Nguyen T. Minh, 18 years old when she died, had joined the Viet Cong after her village was destroyed. She became a sniper because she was small enough to climb high, patient enough to wait, and angry enough to pull the trigger. You found her family? Found her nephew. He's a professor now, teaches history in Hanoi. I sent him a letter through official channels, told him I was the man who killed his aunt, told him she died like a warrior, told him I carried her picture not as a trophy, but as a reminder that courage doesn't belong to one side in a war. What did he say? He thanked me. Said his family had wondered for 30 years what happened to her, whether she'd been captured, whether she'd suffered. Knowing she died in combat, died fighting for what she believed in, it gave them peace. Brennan pocketed his phone. Sometimes the best you can do is make sure people are remembered for who they were, not what others made them. Rachel thought about Kelly Lang, about Amy Chen, about the woman at Fort Hood, about all the victims whose names she'd learn. Then let's make sure they're remembered, she said. They walked out together, leaving behind the ghosts but carrying the mission. The base was already changing. New commanders, new protocols, new training that actually meant something. At the gate, Torres was waiting with travel documents. Your liaison at Fort Hood is Colonel Sarah Mendez. She's expecting you but not happy about it. The investigation there has some powerful people nervous. Good, Rachel said. They should be nervous. Also, you should know, word has spread. 3 other bases have contacted NCIS in the last 48 hours. Anonymous tips about similar situations. Women who heard about Garrison's arrest and decided maybe they could speak up too. Rachel absorbed this. 3 more bases, the ripples spreading wider. We'll get to them, she said, all of them. I know you will. Torres handed over the documents. For what it's worth, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen a lot of investigators. You're going to be exceptional at this. I'm going to try. No, Torres said firmly. You're going to succeed. Because you already understand what most people never learn. This isn't about winning cases. It's about making sure victims know they're worth fighting for. Rachel and Brennan walked through the gate toward the civilian transportation that would take them to the airport. Behind them, Joint Base Ironwood continued its daily operations, training, drilling, preparing warriors. But something had changed. Fundamentally, permanently, the old culture that protected predators had cracked. Maybe it hadn't shattered completely. Maybe it would try to rebuild. But it would never be as strong because now everyone knew that silence had a price, that complicity had consequences. 6 months later, Rachel sat in her new office at NCIS headquarters in Virginia, reviewing case files spread across her desk like a map of institutional failure. Fort Hood, closed, 3 arrests. Naval Station Norfolk, active investigation, 2 suspects. Marine Corps Base Quantico, preliminary evidence gathering. Her wall held a different decoration than most military offices. No awards, no unit photos. Instead, photographs of survivors. Kelly Lang, smiling in her civilian job, engaged to be married. The woman from Fort Hood, back in uniform, promoted. And in the center, a new photo. Amy Chen in dress blues at her promotion ceremony. Private first class to petty officer, third class. The young woman who'd been too afraid to speak had found her voice. She'd testified at Garrison's trial, her words steady. I stayed silent because I thought I was alone. Lieutenant Commander Kellerman showed me I wasn't. Amy was now training to be a victim advocate herself. A knock on her door. Brennan stepped in, officially retired now, but still consulting 3 days a week. He moved slower than he had in Arizona, but his eyes were still sharp. Got something you need to see, he said, holding up a folder. Anonymous package, delivered to the main gate addressed to you. Rachel opened it carefully. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Lieutenant Commander Kellerman, I'm a Special Forces soldier stationed in North Carolina. For 2 years, I've been documenting what's happening in my unit. I have videos, recordings, witness statements. But I'm a man. No one listens to men about this. They say we're lying, that we're weak. Maybe they'll listen to you. Please, help us. Anonymous. Rachel plugged the USB into her secured computer. The drive contained over 100 files. She opened the first one and felt her stomach turn. A video of a young soldier, early 20s, clearly drugged, being assaulted while others laughed and filmed. Male victims. Another layer she hadn't fully considered. Another failure. She looked at Brennan, saw her own reaction mirrored. We're going to North Carolina, she said quietly. I'll make travel arrangements. He paused. Rachel, you know this never ends, right? Every case we close, 2 more open. Every predator we catch, others are still operating. You can't save everyone. No, Rachel agreed, but I can save someone. And someone is always better than no one. After he left, Rachel returned to the video, forcing herself to watch, to document, to catalog. Building the case, finding the pattern. Her phone buzzed. Text from Kelly Lang. Saw the news about Fort Hood. Thank you for not stopping. Thank you for remembering us. Rachel typed back. Always. Then she opened a new file, labeled North Carolina Special Forces, and began the work of transforming horror into evidence, silence into testimony, pain into justice. Outside her window, Arlington stretched toward the Potomac, the Pentagon visible in the distance. Somewhere in those buildings, in bases around the world, there were people suffering in silence, waiting for someone to care, waiting for someone to fight for them. Rachel Kellerman would never wear the SEAL trident, would never join the brotherhood she'd sought, would never kick down doors in some distant war zone. But she'd found something else, a different kind of brotherhood. A different kind of war, a different way to serve. She thought about the Viet Cong sniper Brennan had described. 18 years old, climbing a tree with a rifle, fighting for something she believed in even when it cost everything. That was courage. And what Rachel did now, sitting in an office, reviewing the worst humanity had to offer, knowing each case would drain something from her soul, doing it anyway because someone had to, that was courage too. The weapon had changed. The mission hadn't. She opened the second file from North Carolina, took a deep breath, and continued the fight. The war was just beginning. 10 years later, Commander Rachel Kellerman, they'd given her the rank finally after 10 years of exceptional service, stood before a congressional committee, now 37 years old and carrying a decade of battles in her eyes, presenting the final report of the Special Victims Investigation Unit. Behind her, a screen displayed statistics that had taken a decade to compile. Over 300 cases investigated, 217 prosecutions, 94% conviction rate, systematic reforms implemented across all branches, anonymous reporting systems that actually worked, oversight that had teeth. But the numbers she was most proud of were different. Victim retention rates. Of the women and men who'd reported through SVIU, 73% had remained in service or returned to service after their cases were resolved. 73% who hadn't been forced to choose between their careers and their safety. In the gallery, Master Chief Paul Brennan watched from his wheelchair, 73 years old now, his body finally catching up to decades of service. Beside him sat Senior Chief Petty Officer Kelly Lang, running sexual assault prevention programs for the Pacific Fleet. The committee chairman leaned forward. "Commander, some critics say your unit has been too aggressive, that you've destroyed careers based on accusations, that you've created a climate of fear." Rachel met his eyes without flinching. "Sir, we've destroyed careers based on evidence. And yes, we've created a climate of fear for predators. That's the point. If you're serving honorably, if you're treating your fellow service members with respect, you have nothing to fear from SVIU. But if you're using your rank to exploit, coerce, or harm others, then yes, you should be afraid, because we're coming for you." Scattered applause from the gallery. The chairman looked uncomfortable but nodded. "One final question, Commander. If you could go back to 1998, to Joint Base Ironwood, knowing everything you know now, would you still walk into Bay 3 that night?" Rachel thought about Kelly Lang, about Amy Chen, about the soldier in North Carolina, about 300 cases and hundreds of survivors who'd found their voices because someone had listened. She thought about the sealed trident she'd never earned, the career she'd never had, the dreams she'd sacrificed. And she thought about Master Chief Paul Brennan, who'd taught her that courage wasn't always about the battles you chose. Sometimes it was about the battles that chose you. "Sir," she said clearly, "I'd walk into that room 1,000 times. Because some missions you don't complete by surviving. You complete them by making sure the next person doesn't have to face them alone." The hearing concluded. Rachel stepped down, found Brennan waiting by the exit. "Hell of a speech, Commander," he said. "Learn from the best, Master Chief." "Nah, you surpassed your teacher a long time ago." He handed her a small box. "Wanted to give you this before I forget." Inside was a medal. Not a military one, just a simple brass medallion engraved with coordinates, the location of Bay 3 at Joint Base Ironwood. "Had it made special," Brennan said, "because that's where you became who you were meant to be. Not a SEAL, something better. Someone who fights for people who can't fight for themselves." Rachel pinned it to her uniform, next to her combat action ribbon and her growing collection of commendations. "Thank you, Chief, for everything. For believing when no one else did. For standing with me when standing was dangerous. For teaching me that the mission matters more than the glory." "Just returning a favor," Brennan said. 30 years ago, a woman in a tree taught me never to underestimate anyone. Took me a long time to really understand that lesson. You reminded me what it meant." They walked out of the Capitol together into Washington sunshine that felt like hope. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. There would always be another case, another victim, another predator hiding behind a uniform. But for today, they'd done what warriors were supposed to do. They'd fought for something that mattered, and they'd won not with bullets, but with something more powerful. Truth, justice, and the refusal to let silence win. Behind them, Kelly Lang caught up, flanked by Amy Chen, now a chief petty officer herself, and two other survivors from the original Ironwood case. Women who'd returned to service, who'd rebuilt their lives, who'd transformed trauma into purpose. Commander, Kelly said, we're starting a nonprofit, support group for survivors of military sexual trauma. We want to call it the Bay 3 Foundation. Turn that place from a symbol of harm into a symbol of healing. What do you think? Rachel looked at these women, survivors, warriors, sisters, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pure, uncomplicated pride. I think, she said, that's exactly what that room should become. A reminder that even the darkest places can be reclaimed, that even the worst damage can be healed, and that silence, no matter how powerful, eventually breaks against the truth. They walked together down the Capitol steps, these warriors who'd fought battles no one saw, who'd won victories that would never make headlines, who'd changed a system that had seemed unchangeable. The weapon had changed, the mission hadn't. And the war, the real war, the one against institutional rot and protected predators and cultures of silence, that war continued. But they'd won enough battles to know it could be won. And that was enough. That was everything.